And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, and it's a Friday, January 10th. It's the eve of divisional playoff weekend. And wow, a lot's changed. A lot's happened since the last time we spoke on Monday, hasn't it? As almost all of the coaching vacancies around the NFL have now been filled, with the exception of one, and that's Cleveland, which, if all goes according to plan today, if you're hearing the reports coming out of them this morning, that they could have their new head coach in a couple hours if meetings go well, and we're going to get into all that once we get in the news. And we've also got a new segment where this week that we're debuting, where we will specifically talk about the new hires, and we'll wrap things up with previewing for the 4 divisional rounds. So, I see no better way than to kick things off with news. Wouldn't you agree? Don't bury the lead, as they say in journalism classes. So, last time we talked was Monday, where we talked about the Cowboys hiring Mike McCarthy as their head coach, and we said that there are 3 teams left with coaching vacancies: the Giants, Panthers, and Browns. Well, come Tuesday morning, 2 of those jobs have been filled. The first coming early Tuesday morning, it was announced that the Carolina Panthers had reached a 7-year deal with Baylor head coach Matt Rule. 7-year deal worth $60 million. That is a lot of money. A lot of money. The agreement to come be the Panthers' new head coach. Rule has been an NFL head coaching candidate for the last few years. He first garnered attention a couple of years ago. I think he interviewed with the Jets, if I remember correctly, after he turned the University of Temple into a 10-win college football program that had one of the better defenses in the entire college football. And Jets came knocking, said, hey, you interested? Maybe. And they eventually went in a different direction. And Rule decided, hey, I did good at Temple. Why not kick it up a notch? So he moved over to the Big 12 and took over a Baylor program that was in disarray. That was in the wake of the Art Briles scandal. Now, I'm not going to get into the Art Briles scandal. If you want, you can go read up on how terrible and awful things Art Briles allegedly helped cover up on the University of Baylor campus. But what I'm getting at is he took over Baylor at a time when people were screaming that they needed to shut the football program down because it was so toxic, just to put it in layman's terms. Rule took over, and the first year, they won 1 game. It was pretty bad. The second year, they won, 6, 7 games? Third year, this past season that we just ended in college football, they won 10 games, went to the Big 12 championship, went to a New Year's Six Bowl, had one of the better defenses in college football, and were one of the best storylines the entire year. Matt Rule took a team that was nothing, going nowhere, and turned them into a legitimate college football team. One of the top teams in the nation. And now he's getting a shot at the NFL. And here's the thing. The reason why the Panthers wanted him so badly, and why he was on a short list for a lot of head coaching candidacies in the league, like the Giants, for example, Matt Rule's entire shtick is he's a culture guy. A lot like Ron Rivera, the guy they just fired in Carolina. Matt Rule knows how to instill a solid culture, a very good culture. And I know those are kind of terms that are hard to describe and really get into, but that's what the Panthers want. And that's why they signed him to this deal. I saw a lot of people react shockingly to the 7-year part of the deal. Like, why would you sign him for this long of a contract? He's just a college coach. What has he done? The Panthers are signaling, hey, we know it's not going to be a quick fix. We know it's not going to suddenly be working by year 3. We understand that. We are giving you 7 years. You know, it's not guaranteed. They don't have to keep him for 7 years. But on the surface, they're saying, we believe in you. We trust you. We think you can turn this around. And we're giving you ample time to do it. That's basically what they're signaling. Now, they're not going to give him the full 7 years if he's stinking up the joint in year 5. You know what I'm saying? But they're saying that we think he can do good. We just got to give him time to come in and catch up to the NFL and eventually maybe be something in Carolina. So early Tuesday morning, Panthers hire Matt Rule, the Baylor head coach. That was early Tuesday morning, and you're thinking, okay, we got 1 coaching hire, now we got 2 more. Well, within a couple hours after that, later on Tuesday morning, the Giants announced that they have hired a new head coach. Shortly after the rule announcement, the Giants announced that they have reached terms with Patriots wide receiver coach and special teams coordinator Joe Judge to be their next head coach. Judge was the special teams coordinator, like I just mentioned, for the Pats, and now he gets to be the head coach for the Giants. The media ran with the line that he was just the wide receiver coach, when they should have just said he was the special teams coordinator, because the Pats special teams unit was arguably one of the best ones in the entire league this year. Now, a lot of people were making the joke on air that, hey, who the heck is Joe Judge? I had to go Google his name before we even talked about him. I also had to Google his name because I had no idea who the hell he was when the announcement came out. But he's a special teams guy, and you don't really often hear that thrown around for a new head coach. That, hey, his background is primarily special teams. So it was an interesting hire to say the least, and it was even more concerning because it came literally hours after the Matt Rule hire, and it sounded like from multiple sources that the Giants' number one choice was going to be Matt Rule. So it's very interesting that within hours of him signing with the Panthers, the Giants just said, okay, we're going with Joe Judge. Okay. So that was all the news this week, just the two head coaching hires on Tuesday. Matt Rule goes to Baylor, and Joe Judge, the special teams coordinator from the Patriots, is now the head coach of the Giants. So that's it for news. We're going to end that segment right now, but that leads directly into our newest segment called Rank This. And Rank This, the idea is simple. I will rank things in order in which I like them. It's a power rankings list. Basically. I wanted to do this earlier in the season with teams in more of a traditional power ranking sense, like like the Ravens are the best team in the league, or the Jets are the worst, and rank them order of 32 to 1. But I never got around to doing it. Earlier this week, before the hirings of the head coaches happened, literally like 10 minutes before Rule was hired, I had the idea of, hey, why don't we power rank the head coaching vacancies of the jobs in order of which one is most desirable to least desirable? And at that time, we had 3 open jobs, so I thought we could get like a couple minutes out of it. Then the hirings happened, and I realized I can't do that anymore. We're going to have to switch things up. And I reworked it a little bit to, now we're going to power rank the hirings themselves in order of the ones I like the least to the ones I like the most. So, seems simple enough. So here's how we're going to do this. There have been 4 hirings so far. Washington, Dallas, New York, Carolina. 4 teams. We're going to rank them from 4th to 1st in order of least liked to most liked. Sound simple enough? All right. Without further ado, the first installment of Let's Rank This. Before we get into the official Let's Rank This, it would be remiss of me unless we had this honorable mention. The Cleveland Browns. As I mentioned at the top of the show, it sounds like Cleveland might get a head coach today, Friday, January 10th. It is only just a little after 11 a.m. Eastern. And they have interviewed a number of guys. Earlier this week, they interviewed Kevin Stefanski, the Vikings offensive coordinator. And there's a number of guys on the market, like Eric Bieniemy, Chris Richard, Brian Leftwich, a number of talented coordinators who could step up and be a head coach, in my opinion. But it sounds like the Browns know who they want as a head coach. It sounds like the odd-on favorite, the guy that they really like, is Patriots offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels. Now, Josh's team is out of the playoffs, so he is free to go do whatever the heck he wants right now. And, according to multiple reports this morning, Josh McDaniels is currently inbound to the Browns practice facility, team facility, whatever you want to call it. He is currently inbound, and if the interview goes well, like we're all assuming, as long as he doesn't tank the interview, it sounds like he is going to be their new head coach. He's who the Browns want. And Josh McDaniels is apparently ready to be a head coach again. If you remember, he was the Broncos head coach a number of years ago. He had that handshake agreement with the Colts like 2 years ago to be their head coach and then backed out the last possible minute, literally the night before he was to be introduced. So Josh McDaniels is apparently ready to be a new head coach, and it's apparently the Browns. So had to at least mention them that, hey, Josh McDaniels might be their new head coach. That might happen later today. And the Browns have offensive talent. You know, they have Baker Mayfield, and despite what everybody said this year, I still think he can play at a pretty solid level. They have Nick Chubb, who could have easily been the NFL rushing champion this year if he hadn't no-showed the last game. And if Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry stick around, they have a talented wide receiver core. So they have talent and they got pieces. So the Browns' job, if somebody could get in there and maybe get it working half right, can be something solid. So who knows? So I wanted to at least get that in there, honorable mention. Let's get into the ranking, and we're going to start at 4 and work our way to 1. So coming in at number 4, the hire that I least like, in case you couldn't tell, it's the one everybody's been panning so far. It's the New York Giants. Coming in at number 4, the questionable hire. Why did this feel like a panic hire? I wrote Tuesday night when I did this segment. By all accounts, the Giants wanted Matt Rule, but they never got the chance to interview him as the Panthers jumped on him first. Matt Rule was apparently supposed to interview with the Giants later Tuesday afternoon or something like that, but the Panthers said, no, you're our head coach now. So what do they do? Allegedly, according to reports, they don't interview most of the guys that I just mentioned above, Stefanski, Eric Bieniemy, Chris Richard, or even McDaniels. They don't interview those guys. And they just hire the Pats special teams coach. I really don't understand that. I'm not saying special teams guys can't be coaches. What I'm saying is, for a head coaching job, I would like to see one of two things. Head coaching experience in either college or the NFL, or has called plays before on either offense or defense. You know, be a coordinator for offense or defense. Judge has done none of those to my knowledge. That isn't to say special teams coaches can't be head coaches in the NFL. For example, and I think the shining star example of this, John Harbaugh, the Ravens head coach. His background is primarily in special teams. When he was hired by the Ravens in 2008, 2007, he was coming from the Eagles as their special teams coordinator. So, what I'm saying is, special teams coaches can be NFL head coaches. There's no law saying they can't, but it's very rare that we see one just hired straight up like this. It's rare. Literally, John Harbaugh was the only name I could think of. And look what he's done for the Ravens. He's been one of their best head coaches ever. Won a Super Bowl. Feels like he's on track to win another one this year. He's a pretty dang good head coach. So, now when I initially wrote this segment Tuesday night, when I wrote all my notes, I wanted to pan this hire. I wanted to say it wasn't good, and it felt weird and clunky. Then Joe Judge had his introductory press conference on, what was it, Wednesday? And he won me over a bit. I'm going to be honest, the guy won me over a bit. I really liked what he had to say. Now, I'm not saying the whole idea of we're going to be physical, we're going to be tough-nosed. That didn't bother me a little bit, especially with the idea that Dave Gettleman is their general manager, so I feel like they're going to try and force-feed running the ball a lot. But I like the idea when he said that we're going to try and get our best out of every player, that sometimes teams really don't see the true value in players, that sort of thing. He went on a little rant about that, and I really, really liked what he had to say. I didn't like to start. So what I'm saying is, to start, I didn't like the hire, but I'm starting to come around to it. I really am. I'm more positive than I was when it was initially announced on Tuesday, is what I'm getting at. It's really going to matter when he hires his coordinators, though, because Joe Judge has no offense or defense experience. He has no head coaching experience at either level. So what I'm going to argue is maybe the Giants need to pull a Rams and hire a coordinator that has head coaching experience. Because remember when Sean McVay took over the Rams, they hired Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips had coaching experience, was a veteran presence. So maybe do the same. Go get an offense or defensive coordinator who has been a head coach for a number of years that can help lend legitimacy to Joe Judge. So coming in at 4 in dead last, New York Giants hire Joe Judge. Going to third, Carolina, and with Matt Rule. Well, new owner David Tepper, the Carolina Panthers owner, wanted to make his own mark on the franchise, and we've been hearing that for months ever since he fired Ron Rivera. And he certainly did just that when he went out and got the biggest name from the college football ranks. I already had a very nice opinion of Matt Rule after what he did at Temple. Then I had a front row view of him rebuilding Baylor because I'm a Texas Longhorn fan and Baylor plays in the Big 12 along with the Longhorns. So I got to see his team kick the tar out of my team this year, as they thrashed my Longhorns. Yeah, I had that mentioned in my notes. He's a good coach who knows how to build a defense and a culture. Now, the track record of college coaches to the pros isn't the best in the world. It's not, and there's reason why people hesitate to say that. You know, to say, oh, here comes a college coach, he'll fix everything. The track record isn't the best in the world. It's littered with names like, Nick Saban and, what's his face from South Carolina. I'm forgetting his name right now. But guys like Nick Saban, who done wonders in the college ranks, who is arguably the best college head coach ever, went to the Miami Dolphins and flamed out massively. So what I'm arguing is that the track record is against Rule, but I have faith in Matt Rule. I've seen him turn around a lowly Temple team who nobody paid any attention to and made them something. I saw him turn around a god-awful situation in Baylor and made them something. And I know it's college, and I know it's a lot easier to coach up guys who are 19 to 22, who are still just kids. And it's a lot different when you're coaching guys who are like 30 to 33 and are making millions of dollars and are in fact making more money than you. That's a lot more difficult. But I have a lot of faith in Matt Rule, and I really, really love the hire. I thought whoever got Matt Rule, they're getting a damn good head coach who can really instill a culture and build something. And it will remain to be seen if he can do that, because it's not going to be a quick fix. They're not going to get it done in year 2, not even not year 1, not even year 2, maybe year 3. We'll see something from the Panthers. Who knows? Moving into number 2. Oh, on the power rankings, we're getting into the really good stuff now. The Dallas Cowboys come in at 2, even though they didn't get the guy that I wanted, and they ended up second on the list. I still think the Cowboys did pretty dang good in terms of who they got as their new coach. The Cowboys needed a coach that knows how to go deep into the playoffs, and that is something Mike McCarthy, their new head coach, has done. He even boasts a playoff record that's slightly better than Sean Payton's, believe it or not. If you had told Cowboys fans that your next head coach has a better playoff record than Sean Payton, all of them would sign up in a heartbeat without hesitation. I can guarantee that. And now they got it in Mike McCarthy. The Cowboys roster is loaded everywhere, and their Super Bowl window is closing fast. This team can compete right now and win right now. They got the quarterback, they got the running back, they got the O-line, they have a solid wide receiver group, Amari Cooper, Randall Cobb, Michael Gallup. The only weakness on that offense is their tight end position with Old Man Witten and a bunch of guys who really aren't ready to take over yet. Then on defense, you got guys like Byron Jones, Quinn, DeMarcus Lawrence, and the linebacking crew, Sean Lee, I'm forgetting names, Vander Esch, and everyone else. They have tremendous talent. And that was the main problem with the Cowboys this past year. They were way too talented to be sitting at home at 8-8. They're way too talented for that. The hope is that McCarthy can come in and kickstart a brand new era for the Cowboys. He can turn the corner. He can unlock their potential, is what the hope is. He doesn't have to be the greatest head coach in the world. He doesn't have to be somebody who's better than Belichick or better than Peyton or better than Harbaugh. He doesn't have to be that. Just be slightly above average, in my opinion. Just be good. It's not that hard to be good. You don't have to be great. Just be good. Everything should be fine. I am really excited for the Mike McCarthy hire. So, we've gone 4 through 2, that only leaves one team. And you know it too, and you're just as stunned as I am. I never thought I'd see the day where the Washington football team would be at the top of a power rankings list and did something right. But here they are, sitting at number 1, the Washington football team. I guess anything really is possible in 2020. New decade, new beginnings. Anything's possible, am I right? They went out and, in my opinion, got the best head coach on the market. I wanted Ron Rivera so badly for my team. I think he's the best one. Ron Rivera is a damn good coach, but the best part about him, he knows how to build a culture. You know how I mentioned how Matt Rule is a culture guy, knows how to build a culture? Ron Rivera can do that too. And you know what? That's something that the Washington football team desperately needs. An actual culture. Because despite what Bruce Allen, their president of football operations, said earlier in the year after they fired their head coach, that the team, quote, has a damn good winning culture, and then they went on to post a 3-win record, they didn't have a good culture. They didn't. They need to build one. And they got the perfect man for the job in Ron Rivera. The turnaround will not be sudden. That needs to be said first and foremost. It's not like sprinkling magic seeds or something and suddenly a 10-win program is going to pop up. It's not going to be like that. All right? This needs to have time. The team needs to get a lot of talent first because they're lacking in a lot of areas, especially on defense and the secondary, linebackers. The only positive thing I can note about them is, hey, they got Montez Sweat on the defensive line. They got another defensive line player who I'm forgetting right now. They have a really good wide receiver in young Terry McLaurin, the rookie. And Dwayne Haskins maybe might be something. Everywhere else could use massive, massive improvements. But if everyone stays out of Ron's way, don't micromanage, don't get in his way, owner Dan Snyder, don't do it, and you give him what he needs, help him get his talent, 2 to 3 years from now, we could be talking about Washington as a team with a winning record, and no one is surprised at it. For them, that is a massive deal. Because think about it. The last time Washington had a winning football record, it was 2015. They went 9-7, and it was kind of a big storyline that Washington had a winning football team for the first time in years. So what I'm saying is, a couple years from now, I expect them to be a team with a winning record, and nobody is shocked or surprised by it. Like, oh yeah, Washington's good this year. Yeah. It's like, for them, that is an absolutely massive deal to post a winning record just to begin with. But to be like good to where people see it coming and aren't shocked by it, that's an even bigger deal. So, that completes our first installment of Rank This. We went 4-1 with Washington being 1. I know you're stunned as I am. So expect more Rank This when we get into like the season or off season when we're trying to fill time when there's nothing going on. Now that we've done that, let's get to the main event, people. It's divisional round preview time. And we're going to go in chronological order from the way the games start on Saturday and end on Sunday night. All right? So that means first game up, number 6 Minnesota, the 6th-seeded Vikings, going to San Francisco to take on the number 1 seed in the NFC, the 49ers, on Saturday afternoon. This is going to be a very interesting game. And I think it's going to be a lot closer than I've seen some people say it is. In fact, I almost even want to say this game is on upset alert, that the 49ers are on upset alert. And I don't know why. There's no mathematical thing I can point to say, here, this is why they're on upset alert. It's just a gut feeling. Now, I'm not going to officially put them on upset alert, but it's just a gut feeling I've been having all week long. The Vikings are riding high. They walked into New Orleans, got the massive upset, and Kirk Cousins won it. He won the big game, in case you haven't heard. Kirk did. And that's what should scare people, in my opinion. That should really terrify people. Because the NFL is littered with stories of quarterbacks getting hot in the postseason and leading their team to victory. To win it all, is what I'm saying. Examples: Joe Flacco in 2012 when he got hot, had that postseason where he didn't throw a single interception, if you remember correctly. Eli Manning, the 2 times he won a Super Bowl, just to name 2 guys. But NFL history is littered with stories of guys doing this, getting hot and leading their team on a magical carpet ride. That win last week in New Orleans in overtime where Kirk had 2 big throws, that's the kind of win that could kickstart a hot streak. That should scare people. That should really scare people. But that being said, the Vikings are a little banged up, as Adam Thielen, this dude just can't stay healthy, can he? Suffered a cut on his ankle during last week's game against New Orleans. He's had it taped up. It was apparently bleeding pretty bad. But he's going to be good to go. He'll play, but that's going to be interesting to watch and see how he performs, if that's hobbling him at all during the game. Now, that's what the Vikings are dealing with. Speaking of the 49ers, their defense is legit, in case you haven't heard. But you're thinking to yourself, no defense is invulnerable. No defense is unstoppable. They have a weak point. What is it? I present to you the San Francisco 49ers defensive weak point. The blind side, the hole in their armor. It's their run defense. Oh, yeah. And this is literally the last team you want to have a bad run defense against. As the 49ers finished the regular season ranked 16th in the NFL. So, literally middle of the pack. Halfway in terms of run defense. They're averaging giving up 112.6 rush yards per game. And now you got Dalvin Cook coming in. One of the NFL's leading guys in terms of rush yards, scrimmage yards, you name it, they're going to force feed Dalvin Cook. And that's how the Vikings can pull the upset. They're going to have to force feed him. Now, the 49ers do boast one of the best pass defenses in the league. If I remember correctly, it was ranked number 1. So, if you're expecting Kirk Cousins to come in and just light it up and throw, 3 touchdowns for 350 yards, I wouldn't expect that. But I would expect a heavy, heavy, heavy dose of Dalvin Cook to try and keep this game close. They're just going to force feed him like there's no tomorrow. So that's the 49ers defensive side of the ball. But here's the storyline that I've noticed nobody's really talking about this week is Jimmy Garoppolo, the 49ers starting quarterback. This is his very first playoff start. And we saw what happens when the moment is too big for a quarterback in his first playoff start. I'm talking directly to you, Josh Allen, and the Buffalo Bills. We saw what happens when the moment is too big. A guy gets nervous, he's trying to force things, and it costs his team. So, how will Jimmy G perform? He's performed well in big moments throughout the season. As I mentioned a couple weeks ago, I think he's got what it takes to win in a big moment in the playoffs. Now we just need to see him do it. So, what I'm arguing is it's going to be very interesting to see if Garoppolo comes out, if he's unsettled, if he's off base, or if he just comes out and it's nothing, unusual for him. So, in this game, I think it's going to be very close. Like I mentioned, it's going to come down to the wire. But I've ridden their bandwagon for the vast majority of the season. I'm taking the 49ers to win in San Francisco and in the very fun postseason ride that has been the Minnesota Vikings. And we're moving on to the AFC on Saturday night. And in my opinion, the most fun game of the weekend. You got the number 6 seeded Tennessee Titans going to Baltimore to take on the number 1 seeded Ravens. Oh boy. Now, the last time we saw the Ravens, their starters, I should say, was in Cleveland 2 weeks ago, and they were banged up. Fast forward to now, after, they took week 17 off and they got the bye week, they're still hurt. Mark Ingram, the starting running back for the Ravens, he's listed as questionable with a calf injury. And starting tight end Mark Andrews, also listed as questionable with an ankle injury. Those are the 2 primary guys on that offense. Mark Andrews is their primary pass catcher. It's not Hollywood Brown. It's not any of the other wide receivers. It's Andrews. Now, Gus Edwards, the backup running back for the Ravens, he's been having a pretty solid season. But if, let's say Mark Ingram and Andrews can't play, that's going to severely limit their offense. Even if they're not 100%, let's say they go out there and they're like 50% ready to play. That's going to limit their offense too. The Ravens' offense is prolific. It's the number one in almost every single category. And if it's not number one, it's number two. It's like top 2 or 1 in the entire league in almost every offensive metric. But if they're injured or hobbled, like I just said, at certain positions, those numbers might fall a little. And that shouldn't be shocking if they do. It's going to fall on guys like Gus Edwards, as I mentioned, and rookie wide receiver Hollywood Brown to make big plays for Lamar Jackson. As electric and dynamic as he is, the guy who's going to win MVP, he can't do it all himself. Give him some help. Other guys are going to have to step up and make plays with everybody else hurt. For the Titans, let's talk about them for a second. They came off that massive upset last week. They walked into Foxborough, they slayed Goliath, and now they have an even bigger Goliath to slay now. The Ravens being the best team in football. The Titans' entire offense runs through Derrick Henry. It's their everything. He's the rushing champion for a reason. Now, the Patriots' defense, their weakness was the run, as evident last week. And Henry tore him up. Now, the Ravens' defense is really good too. In fact, one of their strong suits is how they stop the run. Their run defense is pretty stout, averaging giving up, at the end of the regular season, 93.4 rush yards per game. That's pretty good. In fact, that's 5th best in the league good, better than the Patriots. So, if the Ravens are able to stack the box and keep Henry, limited or not producing as much, then it's going to fall on Ryan Tannehill and that pass offense. They're going to have to make some plays this time around. Because Lamar and that offense will score. They will. You can't stop them. You can only hope to slow them down. The Titans have had one of the better offenses since Tannehill took over. They're going to have to show it this week. Get A.J. Brown, their rookie wide receiver, involved. Get the tight ends involved. Maybe move Tannehill around and have him run with the ball a bit. Do whatever it has to do to score points. Because you're going to need it. Ravens are not going to be limited to 14 to 20 points. If you think you're going to hold them to that, you are sorely mistaken. Now, as anybody who has listened to this show is well aware, I have ridden the Titans bandwagon very, very hard since Tannehill took over. They have been a fun team, an exciting team, and they ended the scourge of the Patriots. What's not to love about this Titans team? But for the first time in a while, I am going to pick against the Titans. I'm taking the Ravens to win in Baltimore. With the injuries that they are reporting to have, it's going to be tight. It's going to be closer than I think some people are expecting. But I just think even without Mark Ingram and Mark Andrews, it's still all just too much for the Titans to overcome in Baltimore. And that's why I'm taking the Ravens to win. I just think it's just too much to overcome. And now we're moving on to Sunday. The only rematch we're getting this weekend. Number 4 seeded Houston Texans going to Kansas City to take on the 2-seeded Chiefs. So, the first round of this matchup was pretty good, the one that we got earlier in the season. Houston walked into Kansas City, week 6 or something like that? And won a decisive game earlier this season thanks to dominating time of possession and the Chiefs' offense sputtering in the second half. The Texans had a lot of long, methodical drives and some big plays by Watson and Hopkins in the fourth quarter to help ice the game. It felt like a turning point for Houston, didn't it? It felt like they were ready to rocket up into the upper echelon of not just the AFC, but the NFL. Fast forward to now, and it feels like the exact opposite of that has happened. Since then, the Texans have been hot and cold, going up and down as the season goes on and progresses, and most recently they had one of their hotter moments, that crazy comeback against the Bills. So, that's what the Texans have been doing since that game. For the Chiefs, they've changed who they are. They're a defensive first team now, which is stunning to me. And their defense has been one of the greater storylines in the NFL the last few weeks. I know that they haven't been playing the best competition, but they've still been playing great. One of the best defenses in the entire league for the better part of a month plus. They have really rounded into great shape through pass defense, rush D, pass rush defense. You name it, they're doing it on defense. Now, you're thinking, oh, if they're defensive first, that must mean their offense isn't that good. I will give it to you that their offense is not as prolific as it was last year when Mahomes threw 50 touchdowns and won the MVP award. But they can still get hot at the drop of a hat. You know, if need be, Mahomes can rip it for 250 yards and a half and 2 or 3 touchdowns. They've shown the ability to be able to turn it on when needed. Now, it won't stay on an entire game, but they can keep it on for a good while and get offensive production. In fact, in my honest opinion, I think this Chiefs team is better than it was last year. They're more of a complete team. Because remember last year they were just offense, their defense was terrible, and it couldn't stop anybody. Now they have a good defense. Their offense is still pretty good. Complete team. And their special teams has shown the last couple weeks that they can get touchdowns too. Complete team. The Texans, on the other hand, they were getting flat out beat, embarrassed, and outcoached for the vast majority of last week's game for like 2.5 quarters. They were getting embarrassed. Now they're going to Kansas City on the road in the cold, and I know they won there earlier in the year, but it's playoff time, so it's different now. Especially now that it's much colder. The Texans' offensive line showed that it struggled to still protect Deshaun Watson, and I'm expecting no different this time around. As he had 7 sacks last week? I won't expect that this week, but I'm expecting the Chiefs defense to get to Watson. In fact, this is the only game this weekend where I don't think it's going to be close. I'm taking the Chiefs to win and get revenge for that earlier mid-season miscue. This is the only game where I just don't feel confident enough to say it's a close game. Maybe it's close. Maybe it's a 24-20 final. Maybe. I'm more confident in saying it's probably going to be a 30-20 final. A 10-point margin of victory. I just have no faith in that Texans defense. It's the worst unit in the playoffs right now. And they're having to go on the road against a Kansas City team that's coming off a bye week. And you know what Andy Reid's, the head coach of the Chiefs, record is coming off of bye weeks. It's pretty damn impressive. He's had a week to prepare for him. I think it's the Chiefs, and I think it's the Chiefs by a pretty wide margin. And we're moving on to the last game. Sunday night, and it's Sunday Night Football. You got the 5-seeded Seattle Seahawks going to Green Bay to take on the 2-seeded Packers. Now, remember when I said earlier that I wasn't going to put the 49ers on upset alert? I'm only putting one team a week on upset alert, and this is the game I'm putting a team on upset alert on. It's the Packers. Here's the thing with the Packers. A couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, when it became clear the Packers were going to get the 2nd seed, I said the Packers are the least inspiring 2nd seed in the playoffs in a long time. I have not been impressed by them at all, especially coming down the stretch. They're too hot and cold on defense. Their offense leaves a lot to be desired. I don't get a lot from this Packers team. Now, here they are. They're getting a banged-up Seattle team coming to town, and it's a lot like the regular season. The Packers are benefiting from the schedule because their 13-3 record is littered with teams that aren't that good. And now they're getting a really banged-up Seattle team. And you're thinking, well, maybe this is a good matchup because the Seahawks like to run the ball, and the Achilles heel of the Packers defense is stopping running. And you're right. You're true. The main problem of this Packers defense is they cannot stop the run. But there's a problem with that. as the Seahawks running game has been non-existent since Chris Carson got hurt a couple weeks ago. This Marshawn Lynch, Travis Homer backfield combination has gotten jack diddly squat done. So, I have a simple game plan for the Seahawks to win this. Here is your offensive game plan. You ready for this? 4 words. 4 simple words that will lead you to victory. Just let Russ cook. It's that simple. Just let Russell Wilson cook up some magic. It is not that difficult, people. That's going to be their only game plan because they can't run the ball. They have no run game. Just let him drop back and throw it 40 times. That is your only option at this point. Speaking of the Seattle offense, though, I am a little worried about how their offensive line will perform. They've struggled at times this year, giving up 5 to 6 sacks games. Now they're going up against one of the premier pass rushing defenses in the entire league. Zadarius Smith and the other Smith on that defensive line. I saw a next-gen stat number from NFL Network that said the Packers lead the league in, pressure percentage? Something like that. So it just goes to show, their defensive line can get back there and rush the quarterback. They're one of the best in the entire league at it. What I'm saying is it's a very bad combination, and I am worried for Russell Wilson's life. Now, for the Packers, there's a lot we don't know. Nothing this team does knocks your socks off, does it? Point to the great thing this team does besides pass rush. Point to it, please. You can't, because there isn't one. Every team in the playoffs has a shtick that they're really great at. Packers don't really have one outside of pass rush. They don't. Like I said earlier, I meant when I said that they were the least inspiring second seed in a while. Now, if I remember correctly, these two teams have met in the playoffs a grand total of 3 times throughout NFL history, and the home team has won each and every time. That doesn't bode well for the Seahawks, does it? But I want to take people back. A couple years ago. 2014 to be exact. It's the NFC Championship game. It's in Seattle. The Packers are in town, and they've been dominating the entire game. Running the Seahawks up and down the field. Russell Wilson's looked awful. He's thrown 4 interceptions. It's looking bad. Packers are literally 15 minutes away from going to the Super Bowl. They're up 19-7 in the 4th quarter. Then, Seattle had different plans, as they roared all the way back to force overtime and then proceeded to steal victory from the jaws of defeat and beat the Packers in overtime 28-22 in one of the most monumental and stunning upsets in postseason history. It was a wild ride, and I've heard some people say that it was more stunning than when the Falcons blew the 28-3 lead against New England. That should go to show you how crazy it was. That was the last time these two teams met in the postseason, and that was a crazy wild ride. And I'm expecting another crazy wild ride in this one. Now, it won't be as insane as that one was, probably, but it's in Lambeau Field, in the freezing cold, probably below 20 degrees. That's how every game in Lambeau in the postseason goes. And you got a Seahawks team that has only lost 1 road game all year coming in. One of the better road records in the entire league. I think it's going to be very close and very tight. And like I said, the Packers are on upset alert. I do not really believe in the Packers, but they're benefiting from playing a banged-up Seahawks team in Lambeau Field, in the cold. I'll take the Packers to win, even though I'm not exactly thrilled about it. But they are on upset alert. I'll take the Packers to win. So if you were paying attention, I just took every home team to win this weekend, which isn't a bad strategy, but hey, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that's it for our divisional round preview show. When we talk again on Monday, we will recap all 4 games we just previewed. We'll get you caught up on any news that has happened throughout the league. All this, that, and therefore. And maybe the Browns have hired a head coach by the time we talk on Monday. Who knows? If they do, we'll get you caught up on it. So thanks for stopping by for the preview show. Go enjoy. I don't know why. I've been almost calling it Wild Card Weekend this entire show. Divisional Playoff Weekend. Go enjoy your Divisional Playoff Weekend. And we'll talk to everybody Monday. Bye.